And I mean, we are meeting, having this symposium, thanks to your initiatives. Yes, thank you. Now, to just bounce back on what's been said regarding the 20th of October, it is a coincidence because for quite a few years, the Germans, and with Katharina Brückmann, will here tomorrow also organize the German Day of the Avenues. Now it's been going on for 4 years now, and it's also the European Day of the Tree Avenues. Now, what I would like to do is sort of try to identify this symposium on a short period, on a geographic area, which is also limited, and try to focus and embed it in a whole. This report is the report Magnon spoke about, that the history of avenues is not only a European story, and this is what we're going to see in this symposium, but what is specific for Europe regarding this topic is that that's where you have the longest story in Europe, and it's been going on for 5 centuries now, and it is the place where there's a lot of coherence and consistency with the codification of the various plantings in the garden treaties going back to the 17th century, and it is also where it has spread geographically. Now, the history of the avenues starts slowly in the 15th century in Italy, and then it's going to spread to up to the 16th century, dealing with the ramparts, as you can see here, and along the roads, and in the gardens also, as you can see on the slide. And so, and in this history, then France has been playing a very important part, because it is in France that the first decree was published saying that you had to plant along the roads, and this is also the Jardin à la Française, a French-style garden, which guaranteed a kind of spreading all through Europe. And sort of we keep so this is how we kept this word allée, the Swiss, Swedish, Norwegian, and the Czech, also the Swiss for the French. The French term allée remains, which was taken from the French historical background, and avenues also in English is also a French term, avenue, in this garden treaty, and in Polish as well, and so on and so forth. And so this is also the result of the spreading of ideas which took place through mobility of human beings, of people, through unions, through architects, gardeners, moving from one country to another country, from court to court. So the human being, and then the various reports and treaties which were written, and the trees which were planted. So the idea is about circulating links, exchanges, and which is still going on at the moment, and in this symposium we're attending today. In the gardens there were some tree avenues were aimed at attracting people to a spot. For example, the entrance of the domain, but in the garden it could be a fountain or a statue. So the idea of looking at something thanks to a tree. And then it would allow also to see everything which was there. So as long as we could plant, the symbol was a symbol of domination as well. We would dominate the area. And so in the garden, there's a notion of beautifying the area and the idea of prestige as well. For roads and streets, this notion was not necessarily present at the beginning, but it was superimposed very rapidly to imperatives and to needs, technical needs or practical needs, like, for example, providing wood, refurbishing the paths, guide the people traveling. But there was always this will, the will to beautify the area in the planting projects. And as we said already, this crossing of culture, environment, landscape, which we retrieve today with various stakes. The stakes are different, but still this biodiversity aspect, so the practical aspect, technical aspect, which adds up to this beauty aspect, which was also published in the L350 law, which mentioned this aspect of culture, biodiversity, amenities, and I mean everything is connected. Now, what was the landscape at the beginning of the 20th century when the First World War started? We planted a lot after the mid 19th century. We wrecked down the ramparts and we planted in Brussels, in Geneva, some boulevards. Then we developed also in the city with Haussmann. There were some plantings on the great avenues. In Paris, we doubled the number of tree-lined roads, up to 100,000 trees. We developed also public constructions, so like schools. There's the Lime School, École des Tiers Lime School, with trees as well. In the 19th century, then in Spain also, a kind of the tree were planted, so tree in alignment. There were about 100,000 trees, so 100,000 of trees are planted with the Spanish regenerationism. So countries like Luxembourg covered with fruit avenues, fruit tree avenues, also Austria, Switzerland, Neuenburg also, thousands of trees were planted. And so at the dawn of the 20th century, when the First World War broke out, then France had about 3 million trees along its rural roads. And the Belgian rural roads line up about 3 million trees, in Belgium more than 800,000 trees. And so that's where the ALLÉES is everywhere. That's when the Commonwealth soldier arrived in this context, and we start having this kind of landscape with these Austrian soldiers. There was this kind of beautification movement under the impetus of tourism associations, which led up to planting the entries to the cities with the aim of civilizing the space in a kind of a European way. So our symposium came to talk about this aspect, the tree plantings, to pay tribute as a kind of remembrance, a symbol for the soldiers who had fallen during the war. Now, regarding the European landscape, it also played a kind of important role, with some references. When the avenues were inaugurated, the point was to identify the roads which were taken by soldiers, and we wanted to create a link in a direct or indirect way when we think of this plantation movement, which started in Australia, following the practices, the European practices. So it's a kind of link and connection. And what is also very interesting, to rebuild this parallel between what was useful and beautiful. We'll probably repeat that aspect along the symposium, but the question which was raised was how could we remember all this? Now, should we create a kind of useful monument, a kind of a memorial stone, or something which would be very useful to the living population, which would help those people to move forward and recreate a kind of new society, move towards something more positive. And so these three avenues encapsulates both aspects, the useful aspect of the road, but also the beautifying aspect. And so actually I'm going to conclude. So in the Daily Phoenix by 1923 in Canada, we can read that a nice avenue is a symbol of eternal victory of life on death, on that, which rests the eye of the passerby looking at the beautiful landscape. And so we can imagine, as an inhabitant is talking about Remembrance Avenue, where that person has some members of family talking about the souvenir. But in fact, I mean, the beauty dimension seems to prevail and takes us back to the notion of souvenir. So that person was from Australia. She had been living close to this avenue where relatives have a tree, and then she says that she's always moved, and she said that each time I go past with my car once a week or 3 times a week, then I think that this avenue is a wonderful avenue. Aren't these alleys so beautiful and magnificent? And I think I forgot the rule you started with, saying, Ich liebe Allee, I love avenues. And now we're really going to enter to the core of this topic with these memorial avenues going through across the various countries with you all. Thank you very much, and wish you a fruitful symposium. Thank you. So also I forgot to press the next key to show you the Cathedral Avenue. So this aspect, the notion of beauty, and that prize was awarded within the SPETH prize awarding session. Thank you very much.